Asymmetry. The lack of equality or equivalence between parts or aspects of something. Not much room for board game interpretation there then, eh? I'm your host Benji, and this is the top 10 deeply asymmetrical games to have ever graced our tables. So, to the rules. Well, asymmetry in its broadest sense is everywhere. Variable player powers are the most overt form of asymmetry we often come across. But even broader than that, you could argue that any game that simply sees each player starting with a different set of tools would fit under the umbrella. However, this list is not for those games, because A, they are huge in number, and so then I'd be forced to pick favourites, and B, what really interested me was how far the boundaries of asymmetry had been pushed in the board gaming space. But what did I exclude from the list? Well, the two main things are one versus many titles. Ultimately, I wanted a selection of games where more than just two teams or loose collectives were doing and were given different things. I also drew the line at recreations of historical events, because there is a whole lot of grey in said genre in terms of asymmetrical interpretation. And so, with that out of the way, we arrive at the 10 most asymmetrical games in order from least asymmetric to most. Number 10. Star Wars Rebellion. If this weren't a two-player game, which it is, I probably wouldn't have put it on this list, because mechanically speaking, there's quite a lot of the same things going on if you're playing either the Rebels or the Evil Empire. And to dilute that over multiple rebel players would be like asymmetrical butter spread too thin over completely symmetrical toast. As it is, the opposing win conditions of Star Wars Hide and Seek are thematically diametric enough to be the main reason we're talking about this game in the here and the now. Whether you like it or not though, it's the theme and the variability of how each game plays out that ticks the asymmetrical box. With that being said, it's also the reason it only just squeaks into the top 10. Number 9. Claustrophobia. Sweet pre-painted miniatures, which has not a jot to do with our topic of discussion today, but it's been said and we move on. This time it's written on the box that it's two-player only, so think of this as the last time I take liberties with my own rules. The game, Benji. Yes, the game. Set in a dungeon, but not exactly a crawler. You play as either the humans, the less is more side of the coin that have a number of player boards to represent each of your party, or the voluminous demonic hosts, producing wave upon wave of obstacles for the humies to overcome, and who have their own communal player board where actions are chosen and carried out. This scenario and campaign based game can somewhat rinse and repeat, but its asymmetry is clear. Number 8. Bang, the dice game. Am I bending the rules here? Am I? Bollocks. There are effectively 3 teams around the table, no matter what the player count, in this hidden role dice chucking game set in the wild wild west. You're either the sheriff, aka El Scarifo, or his deputy, one of many outlaws, or one of the 1 or 2 renegades, all doing damage and healing to those 1 or 2 steps adjacent to him around the table. Because your roles are all hidden, your actions are going to speak louder than words if you want to be the best Timmy teammate you can be. Although the win conditions for each group are all variations on a theme of last man standing, there's still plenty of asymmetry to go around when you take a step back and look at this game holistically. Number 7. Uboat. A cooperative, highly complex team game this is, but it's also a game where everyone around the table has their own distinct responsibility and set of rules to adhere to. Not only that, but it's real time and app based just to add to the mix. Here you have the choice of playing the captain, the first officer, the navigator, or the chief engineer of a WW2 submarine. Now, whilst there's a lot you do on the app, which facilitates the real-time element and drives the missions, the submarine-shaped board plays host to fairly traditional worker placement, with each officer having their own player boards as well to carry out their quite bespoke roles and responsibilities. This is one beast of a game and no slouch in the asymmetry department either. Number 6. Raptor. A 2-player only game that tells the age-old story of scientist explores nature. Scientist gets a bit too curious and tries to nab a dinosaur's offspring. And Dinosaur Mummy says, "Absolutely not, nerdlings, I'm gonna eat you." A simple grid movement game underpins a quite ingenious bidding for actions game, which is actually where the opposing themes meet in the mechanical middle, because each turn you're technically bidding for the right to go first, but bid too high and the losing player might be going second, but there'll also be chock full of action points to spend. An almost chess-like movement to the game sees you going back and forth until the kidnapping is successful or the blood splatter on the local plant life is total. Number 5. Skulk Hollow. Spoiler alert, this is the penultimate 2-player only game on this here list. And I mention that because there can only be so much asymmetry with 2 players. Yet this crams a very healthy dose of it in, all sprinkled in variable player powers. The thing is, not only does each side, the quote-unquote heroes of this tale, sit in an ancient woodland, and the big bad guardians each have their own particular set of skills, but as you would hope, being on this list, differing endgame goals as well, which is broken down even further on the Guardian side, as each one has its own individual win con. At its heart though, it's a fairly lightweight action points game, using cards as the mean to do the things you need to do in order to take home the spoils. Number 4. Root. Whilst we did place an embargo in historical war games, there was absolutely nothing stopping us including a fantasy war game in this here list. A game that sees you play as disparate factions of woodland creatures. At its core, it has fairly light area control and conflict resolution mechanisms, but that is just the shell for the rich depth found in each of the available actions. 4 in the core game and many more released in expansions. There is no better way to describe the action than to acknowledge that playing with a faction for the first time is like learning a sub-game in and of itself. So, whilst there is a decent amount of mechanical crossover on the actual board, this feels like everyone around the table is playing a different game and you all just meet in the middle. Number 3. Space Cadets. The second cooperative team game on the list removes the authenticity that could be found in Uboat and replaces it with a more wacky space-based tone where you play as the bridge crew of a starship. Why is this higher on the list despite its lower complexity? Well, not by virtue of any involved mathematical formula, that's for sure. No, purely because this has 6 roles for players to fill instead of 4. Whether you're the helmsman plotting the ship's course, the engineer using dominoes to provide the power, the weapons officer using dexterity to launch torpedoes, the shield officer placing tiles, the sensor officer going full touch to lock onto enemies, or El Capitan, who's quarterbacking the whole affair, there is only the unpredictable and slightly balmy to be found here. Number 2. Android Netrunner. Most likely the game that gave me the idea for this list in the first place. You play as either the hacker, aka runner, or the corporation in a game set in a cyberpunk near future. Whilst fundamentally your goals remain the same, to score or steal agendas, how you get to that point is completely different. As the runner, your goal is to build the appropriate infrastructure that will give you the tools to make runs on the Corp's servers. Conversely, the corporation will be putting up firewalls, aka ICE, in order to stop them. This game is equal parts cat and mouse and equal parts bluffing, as you never quite know as the runner whether the server you're hacking holds anything worthwhile. In my humble opinion, this is almost perfect asymmetry in action. And number 1, Vast. The spiritual precursor to a game that's already featured highly on this list, Root. The difference here was that Vast was even more ambitious, and subsequently a little bit less accessible and refined. Whereas Root shared some crossovers including some basic mechanics and the ultimate win condition, Vast is unencumbered by such requirements. You might be playing a knight looking to slay a dragon, but there are also goblins trying to moider said knight. But then there's the thief, who like a sneaky prick is just looking to duck and dive and nab up some treasure whilst it's all kicking off elsewhere. And of course the dragon is trying to wake itself up quick sharp before it comes a trophy on someone's wall. But oh my sweet bejesus, you can also play the cave that everyone is inhabiting. You have to really want it to get the most out of this game, but if you do, you're treated to the very epitome of pure asymmetry. And so there you have a comprehensively well researched list of highly asymmetric games. I suspect this is a style that is well worth a good old debate as to what's what and who's who. So if you feel like I've got these all out of sync or I've missed some glaringly obvious choices, then please let me know in the comments. For now though, my name is Benji and this is him telling you that this video is over.